The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here right now. In the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow, I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we talked about the selfless act of two women, a Hebrew mother and an Egyptian princess. Now, both of these women saw something special about baby Moses. They recognized that there was something significant about him, and they both were willing to defy the king of Egypt in some capacity because of their compassion and recognition of whatever that special thing was. Now, Moses at the time, again, was a baby, but babies are more than just eating, sleeping, pooping interruptions. They are carriers of destiny. And it is super important for us to recognize that there's more, that there is purpose for their lives, and that God desires to do something with them. And so it's amazing to see that these women, in some subconscious way, aligned themselves with being a part of making sure that he was taken care of, that he was protected, that he was cultivated into the being that will later help to reshape history for the Israelite people. And so now Moses, that little baby boy, is a grown man. Okay. Keep in mind, he is a Hebrew man. He is a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. However, he is being raised in Egypt by the Pharaoh's daughter. Okay. The very man who had a mark on his life to begin with is now the adopted grandfather of Moses. Okay. I imagine this came with a lot of challenges for Moses because he's a Hebrew boy being raised in Egypt amongst Egyptians, too Hebrew to actually fit in as an Egyptian, but he's also too Egyptian to truly fit in amongst the Hebrews. But here we see Moses, because I believe and I imagine that there was something inside of him that called him back to his own people. And we see that because he visits. So here one day he goes to visit the Hebrews and he sees their struggle. He sees the way that they are being mistreated and abused. And one day he witnessed an Egyptian beating one of his own, a Hebrew man. And something just rose up in Moses, and he's like, not today. I'm not having it. And he stood up for this Hebrew and looked around, and he actually unalived the Egyptian, dug a hole in the sand, and then buried this Egyptian to hide what he did. Then he went on about his business. The very next day, he finds himself back out there amongst his own people, visiting the Hebrews. And this time he sees two Hebrew men fighting. He's hardwired to stand up for injustice. When he sees something that's not right, we learn that there was something inside of Moses that had zero tolerance for it. So he stood up for the guy who's being beaten up, and he's like, yo, man, what you doing? Yeah, like, why are you beefing with each other? That's your own. Why are you fighting your friend? And the Hebrew man who started the fight was like, I suggest you mind your own business. We know you got your little place in the palace and everything, but did they make you king too? Oh, okay. So what you gonna do? You gonna off me like you did that other dude? And that was the moment when I imagine Moses backed all the way off. And he's like, yo, everybody knows. The thing that he thought was hidden, the thing that he thought was a secret was actually new news for both the Egyptians and the Hebrews, because sure enough, Pharaoh knew about it. And Pharaoh made it his assignment to off Moses. He tried to unalive Moses, and Moses literally had to run for his life. And he found himself in the town of Midian. A little backstory: the town of Midian was named after one of the sons that Abraham had with this woman named Keturah. After Sarah died, Abraham and Keturah got together. They had all of these sons. And before Abraham died, he actually gave all of his sons these little gifts, and then he left everything else with Isaac because he was the promised child, right? The one who was to carry on the covenant. And Abraham sent all of his other sons away, like, y'all got to go figure it out. Go somewhere east and settle there. And so that's what Midian did. But this is where Moses finds himself running, and he makes it to Midian, and he's just kicking it at the well. And I imagine him sitting there with his head in his hand, just trying to process everything. Like, what have I done? What am I going to do? Where am I supposed to go? Like, he's really just trying to figure out his next steps. So while he's sitting there, these 7 women, they were sisters and daughters of the priest of Midian, are approaching the well because that's what they did. They watered the flocks. And so they were walking up to the well, and Moses noticed that these hooligans were rolling up on these women and trying to run them away. Now, I don't know about you or your upbringing, but I remember growing up seeing these pictures of Moses, and he was this frail, old, weak looking guy with this long white beard. That is not at all how I picture him. If you've already gotten your copy of Moses, the Misfit, the Thug, the Called from ImagineBibleStories.com, if you haven't, pick up your copy. But if you've already picked up your copy, you see exactly how I picture and how I imagine Moses looking. We've seen now a number of different occasions when Moses stood up for people. He was a defender, right? He was an advocate. And here it happens again when Moses recognized that these women were being bullied. He stood up for them, and he went and he handled these dudes. He's like, nah, I'm not having it. So he goes, he puts these dudes in their place, and then he makes sure the women are good. He waters the flocks, and he sends them on their way. And then I'm sure he just kind of settled back like, man, why can't people just get along? Anyhow, the women, they go back home excited, I imagine, right? Thrilled about the fact that, one, they didn't have to do all that hard work, that somebody stood up for them. They were seen, they were covered. They make it back home, and their father, Jethro, also named Ruel, he looks at the sundial like, what y'all doing back so early? And they were eager to tell him, like, oh my gosh, daddy, like, let me tell you what happened. We went up to the well, right? Like we do all the time. And these dudes, they were so mean. Oh, they was just savage. They came and they were like trying to run us away. And then this Egyptian man, he came and he saved us. And I just can see them interrupting each other and all wanting to interject and put in their portion of the story, whatever. But they tell their father what happened, that Moses took care of them. And not only did he save us from the bully, but he also watered the flock so we didn't even have to do it. And so their pops is listening very attentively. And then he looks around and he's like, yeah, so where is he? Like, y'all just left the man at the well? Like, y'all didn't even invite him over so that he could get a bite to eat? And they're like, oh my gosh. So they went back and they invited Moses for dinner to come and partake of a meal with them. And he accepted their invitation. And when he went into their home, he eventually just ended up settling there. And in time, Jethro gave one of his daughters, Zipporah, to Moses to be his wife. And Moses, as I mentioned, he settled there. But at the same time, there was this awareness that he wasn't home. And I know this because Moses and Zipporah had a son together, and Moses named him Gershom, which means I am a foreigner in a foreign land. So he was very aware, again, that he wasn't home wherever it is that he truly considered home. But he still had life. He still had purpose. He still had destiny. And keep in mind, he is a man that is hardwired to do something about injustice. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the king of Egypt died. So Pharaoh, the one who was out to get Moses, is now dead. But at the same time, the Israelites are still suffering. They're struggling. They're still enslaved. And it's to the point now they're just crying out to God for help. Help us, Lord. And it says they cried out to God and that God heard their cries. I love that about God. He is a God that hears. So I highly encourage you to speak to him. Speak to God. He hears. I'm a living witness that he hears. We saw it before with Hagar and Ishmael when God heard their cries and responded. So here, they cried for help. God hears their cries. He remembered his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then he knew it was time to act. Like, okay, cool. They suffer. I'm about to do something about it. In the next episode, we'll see how God is going to use Moses in a very significant way. He's going to use what he hardwired, what he implanted into Moses from the very beginning for the benefit of this entire nation. And so I'm excited to get into that if the Lord blesses me to record another episode. But until then, bye for now.